infrastructure costs, management salaries, SG&A again, R&D costs, capex, manufacturing. Good. Yeah. I think there's a good unison here. So yeah, it's like a typical manufacturing, product based company, which, but there's also capex element. So you're already setting the whole in the plant and machinery, and, kind of creating it. So it's important, which, and these are just two examples. The reason I'm saying is it's all up to, your business model at the end of the day, and how you want to represent. So then there is again, in the outflow side also, bucket at the right level. So revenue, I would say like 4 to 8 line items might be, reasonable for a early stage startup kind of a company. Outflow, maybe I would say still you can stretch it to 20 also, but, making it a lot, because you can always, give all the details in the assumptions later, right? So or the staging area. So keep it like 8 to 15 line items. So an investor, when they can look at it, they can just look at, okay, how your revenue is going, how your cost is growing, and also do some math, ratios and all of that. But not too much detail where, people get lost. See, everyone, even if they spend 15 minute, 10 minute looking at your model, they should be able to make some sense out of it, right? If you put lot of detail, then it doesn't, help that cause. So that is the intention with which I'm telling this point. um, Again, bucketing of expenses is important, because you don't have the luxury of, let's say if you have 100 people, you can't have 100 people's names as, expense, right? So you'll bucket it as salaries. And like this person has done, you can put, say, salaries for engineering separately, salaries of salespeople separately, because you might want to do some analytics. Again, like I said, salaries of engineering can be funded by equity, but you ideally shouldn't want to fund your salary of salespeople from equity. Of course, early days, no choice, but eventually as you start making revenues, right? So that should be like a some kind of a metric in your head, that, I should not be paying, I mean, I should be paying salespeople from the revenue that they generate at the end of the day, right? um, so yes, so categories of expenses linked to, revenue line items. So how can these expenses can be linked to the revenue? So that way you want to bucket it, uh, kind of a thing. So that's why, so you can link revenue to the sales, salaries of the sales. But product is more non-linear, so you can say, uh, I will, put it under more a central cost kind of a thing, or direct indirect costs. So some categories are variable, fixed or variable costs. So you want to put all the variable costs differently and the fixed costs differently. For example, even here, let's say these are all the fixed or the, capex related costs, while many of these might be variable costs, or which are directly linked to the sale of the unit. So I will have commission only, say, well, commission is a variable cost, right? Similarly, labor cost could be a variable cost, because for every product that you generate, you can attribute a particular cost element of the labor required. But maybe, let's say the chief marketing officer is not a variable cost, because irrespective of whether you are selling that unit or not, you are still incurring that cost, right? uh, and cost assumptions, yeah, exactly, again, like, how the assumptions correlate to revenue growth. Many a times, like, the cost of goods sold is directly correlated to the revenue. So the more units you sold, the more incremental. So your cost of goods sold is assumed based on the number of units, which is linked to your revenue at the end of the day, right? So some assumptions can be linked to the revenue itself. Some of them are based on unit economics, and you can say that, for this, customer acquisition cost is so much, so I will put the marketing or the acquisition cost as this much, right? So that is the way you can decide. Or you can have a projection of hiring, like, say, I'm hiring so many sales people, so many operations people, and that's how you will assume your manpower or your human resources cost. And capex plans, like, if you say I'm up in, if you are a production startup or a manufacturing startup, you say next 6 months, 9 months, I will 6 to 9 months, I will up my capex or capacity, and that will, let's say, cost 50 lakhs. So that will be like a, you are projecting it there, right? So again, idea is to make, make sense of your cash flow overall, look at where are the places where you have to invest, etc. uh, yes, good question. Actually, Santosh, you are very right, in the sense that, the only incremental cost of goods sold, maybe for tech company, is the cost of distribution. Because once you create the software, it is infinitely scalable, or, in that sense, it can be sold online. But if there are any, marketing costs with regard to, selling itself, or any distribution related costs, like Amazon takes a commission, and all of those become your variable costs, right? Exactly. But maybe you are accounted for salaries and you would have capitalized it, and you're amortizing that software over a period of time. Cool. So these are all the aspects. Then how to build, some other tips before we actually get into the building zone is try to create the monthly projections for an ideal period of 12 to 24 months. Of course, the first 12 months can be more accurate and actual, visualizing those 12 months, and the next 24 months can be some kind of assumption or extrapolated. um, Assumptions and staging are customized. Like I said, you have an assumptions sheet, you have a staging place, and then you have the actual projections. And you can be like, you can have multiple sheets for this. So for example, just for hiring you can have assumptions, and your HR costs, you can have a different staging area. For the sales projections, revenue projections, you can have a different staging area. So I have seen cash flows which have 30-40 tabs as well, right? But you can also create a very elegant cash flow with just 4 or 5 tabs if you don't have many line items, right? So it's all up to how you want to abstract out the complexity in understandable ways, right? So that you don't dump everything in one place and make everyone confused, including you. Many times I have seen that if you have made it with sufficient complexity, then you might yourself not understand it after 6 months. So it's better to keep everyone's life simple, easy. So yeah, you can have multiple sheets for product lines, categories, geographies, expense categories, and all of that. I will talk about it. But like I said, coming back to the main sheet, keep it at an optimal level of detailing that I spend 5 minutes, I should get a good sense of what your company does. And that is the benchmark I generally have when I look at cash flows. Again, try to avoid hard coding numbers in the main sheet, which I will talk about it, and should always be derived, because there is a rationale for every number that's on your cash flow sheet, right? And even if it's a one number, then it should have like, you can put a comment against it, kind of a thing. So anyone looking at, people should enjoy looking at the cash flow, right? It should not be like something very boring. People should see, okay, why is there growth happening, or what are the assumptions. So people enjoy going after it, and you should also enjoy making it. Then staging sheet for calculation, aggregation, doing bunch of, like the name indicates, it's staging. So it's trying to bucket various things to that optimal line item which you want to put it on the cash flow main sheet. And everything should have assumptions, and every number on the cash flow sheet should be able to traceable. And one of the most important rule, and something that puts away a lot of people, like investors, is have comma separation, right? It's a simple button on the Excel sheet. Every large number should have comma separation. The people will not wait to read it's 1 lakh or 10 lakhs, right? It should be comma separated, or like either in millions or lakhs or crores, kind of a thing. It's a very simple thing to do, but I see that underlooked, very very seriously, even some very very good companies, but it's a very simple thing to do. So this was, I started my career in an investment banking role, and this was my day one. I was told that it is a sin to not comma separate numbers, and I have been following that to this day. So I thought I'll mention that to you guys. So yes, and the last part I will show is the big picture. So once you've created a month on month thing, you should go for the big picture. So how do you annualize it? So the template gives you a 2 year version automatically, and then you can extrapolate the remaining years, or how much ever you want to take it to. Like some investor want to say, hey, where will you be in 5 years? Then you can say, okay, as per this, I will be hitting 5 crores of revenue, right? And things like that. So and it's all based on your assumptions. So, and you can also have growth extrapolations at overall level or line item level, etc., on the sheet itself, right? And this is the way you will create an annual cash flow, a quarterly cash flow, and a lot of analytics on top of it, like what are the different ratios of each of the costs. For example, um, the default case is, as your startup grows, each line item with respect to the revenue, the percentage should keep coming down. For example, my employee cost starts with 107%. So employee cost is 45 lakhs here, and the revenue is 42 lakhs. Obviously, I'm spending more for my employees than actually the revenue I'm making. And in many startups, let's say, like Cred for 1 year, right? It would have made maybe 30-40 crores of, employee cost, but it didn't make any revenue, right? But that's all because it will make the future revenue. That's the hope with which everyone has put in money into that company, right? So that should be noticeable. So you can see that the employee cost actually is 106%, but at the end of year 5 it is 22.7% based on these projections. So if there are inconsistencies, you should highlight it. You should make note of it. It should not be like any of these expense ratios should go up, which is counterintuitive. There should be very solid reasoning why that is happening in some sense, right? So in a way, this template also helps you identify these things and kind of correlate it in your mental model itself, right? Whether things are making sense, it's going in the right direction, with the right trajectory, right? So that's all about what I wanted to kind of discuss. And the next next few minutes we'll actually build something. Okay. But any questions? I'll take a pause. I know it was a bit of monologue till now, but I wanted to get the bricks and nut. It's literally the nuts and bolts of what you will eventually build. Yes, you can ask, Anish.
Hi, good evening. So this the thing that you told about reducing employee costs. So yesterday I
Hmm.
was talking to my co-founder, and
Hmm.
he said that in time marketing cost should also decrease
Yes,
because then
yes,
organic growth should increase. So if
yes.
everything starts decreasing, what is it that should increase? Should the profits
Of
increase?
course. Yeah. So everything starts decreasing, then obviously what is left is becoming a profit. Unfortunately, in year 1, year 2, your overall cost will actually exceed your revenue anyway, right? So you are hopefully you are aiming that as soon as possible. I will at least start breaking even from an annual point of view, and eventually start make. So that is where the profitability lies, right? So
Then
eventually from your
expansion is the next answer.
yes, then you can obviously invest in expansion, but then then you can fund that expansion. See, then there's a clarity that hey, you have proved the model to some extent. Now I can leverage basically. So I can take money or I can take loan and expand. But then you are very, very clear that you have demonstrated profitability, and now with that consciousness I am going to go for kind of I might still make loss the next year, but I know that this is all in the longer picture going towards a cash surplus situation. Every business at the end of the day needs to become cash surplus, right? So the ultimate aim of all these percentages coming down is you are becoming cash surplus,
Okay,
right?
thank you.
Great. Any other question?
Hi, Shrikant, Rahul here.
Yeah, Rahul.
Yeah, being a different scenario here altogether. In case I am an agri-tech startup, my buyer is asking for a financial model for me.
Mhm.
It's okay to show all the unit economics and all the things with the VCs, but when it comes to the buyer itself, it will be a different things to. We will lose the power of negotiation and all those things. He wanted to understand how sustainable our business will be. So in this case, how can we take this?
No, good question. So I think everything in life is like a need to know basis, right? Even VCs why you are showing because they need to know because they are investing in the company. In a typical buyer seller discussion, you generally don't show these details. But maybe I'm just preempting your situation where maybe it is a strategic buyer and that buyer needs to know that you will be there for a long period of time to supply whatever you are supplying in some sense. So it's a judgment call, Rahul. My default answer would have been no. Like, why should you even share your financials with your customer, right? Because you're a private company at the end of the day. But I need to really understand, who has what bargaining power, or is this, that kind of a thing. My default answer is no, by the way, because it is your internal data at the end of the day. As long as you have the paperwork and all the liabilities and the obligations between each other, I think it should be fine. But like I said, these are all very nuanced questions. So we might have to, maybe we can take it offline as well, right? But if you are, see, if you are already have traction, you have been in the market, you have been selling something, then there is no obligation to share financial data to your customers, right?
Okay, got it. I see very big companies. Example, if I go with the Walmart and ask for the collaboration, they definitely ask for the
Yes.
financial
See,
model.
but then the intention is it's not a simple buyer seller discussion. One, it is a very strategic partnership level discussion, right? There might be exclusivity. there might be a obligation of quality and performance and all of that, right? So there is a larger nuance associated. Second is, it could also be a potential acquisition discussion eventually, and they are testing waters, right? So yes, then it is a more I think there's a partnership layer along with it, and there again it all comes down to who has the bargaining power, who is bringing what to the table, etc., right? So again, uh, on a limited basis, you can definitely share certain details to make the deal work for you, right? But again, see, at the end of the day, all of these numbers are made up anyway based on the assumptions that you know today. So these assumptions can change tomorrow. But sometimes people do look at these models, these financials very internal to them. They don't want to disclose, especially for a private company which is going in the market raising funds, etc. You want to kind of keep it limited. Keep so the default answer is need to know basis. And if you really think your customer needs to know your financials, maybe there's a case we have to discuss that. And yeah, the example you gave of Walmart makes more sense if they are going for a strategic route of either partnering with you or acquiring you or investing in you in some sense eventually.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, somebody has raised hand. Feel free to use the chat. I will be looking at. Yeah, I will actually show you the staging sheet, Abhijit, very soon. Sorry. Yeah, so staging sheet, as the name indicates, Varun, it's basically where you prepare your numbers before you are presenting it onto the main cash flow, which is what is a more summarized version. And staging, the name staging is because you can customize it to the way you want. It needn't be all cash. In a typical cash flow sheet, which I will show you, it's all cash items at the end of the day. In a staging sheet, you can have non-cash items like number of units, number of people, and all of that as well, right? So you are preparing anything you are preparing on a time series basis, you can assume it can be on the staging sheet. I will show you that. Yeah. Yeah. What should be the best metric showing business sustainability? Your month on month net cash flows in some sense. So if you are showing business sustainability, your cash flow will keep increasing. Basically, it's a very straightforward metric in a cash flow statement, right? But an investor can see business sustainability from a revenue growth point of view, or number of customers point of view. So these are all proxies, but the reality is cash at the end of the day, right? You're sustainable only because of cash flow at the end of the day, right? Your profits will also reflect in cash at the end of the day, right? Great. Let me share a quick template. So first I'll share a very quick template, and then I will start with an empty template, okay? Because that I think makes more sense. So like this was some sample template that I had created earlier. So this kind of explains a lot of those things. So assumptions are basically annual assumptions or kind of absolute assumptions as well, like what is the growth rate, what is the price per unit, right? What is the cost of goods sold for product one, what are the distribution related costs. Here you can create a unit economics also. What is the contribution margin? I'll talk about it later actually. What are the salary assumptions? And Varun asked, like, what is the staging area? This is like a staging area. So let me again, so assumptions, staging, and cash flow, this is what I had told. So cash flow is the ultimate sheet where you start with a cash balance, you do inflows monthly, you do the monthly outflows, and you get the ending cash balance. So if you see here in this example, you start with a zero cash balance, you made revenues of 35,000, and you made outflows of about 28 lakhs. That's because you spend 25 lakhs on capex and you spend 2.5 lakhs on employees. That's why you're negative about 28 lakhs in the year one, first month itself. And you carry over that to the next month, and the process continues, right? This is simple, and this template is readily available. So I can literally, clean up everything. I can clean up everything like this. Okay. I'm just doing that, right? And everything is cleaned up, and then I can start populating it, right? So I can then so it's a fresh slate. So I can start an empty template, and then I say I start with 10 lakhs, let's say, right? 10 lakhs, and then I can assume that I might have revenues. So I'll actually create this shortly, but I'm saying this is the way you'll use the cash flow. But let me just go back to that because I wanted to show you some of the things. So you start with zero, and every month on month you see the inflows, you see the outflows, and you see the cash balance. So in a business sustainable company, the negative cash balance should keep coming down, and you start making profit. So you see, this actually is not a sustainable company, because I started with zero cash flow, and you see it is continuously increasing the negative cash flow. So this company to survive it for 2 years, it needs 84 lakhs. Somebody has to fund this 84 lakhs, otherwise this company will not survive, right? So it's very important to note that. So all these numbers are basically to answer Varun's question, is coming from the staging area. This is where I said the numbers on this sheet should never be hard coded, right? It should not be like I should just come here and say 15 lakhs. Maybe I know it is 15 lakhs, but I should not say it here, because then I don't know where all I have used it. So if I use staging area, I use it, and I have said that this is an hard coded input, right? So it's all methodical at the end of the day. So every number here has a rationale, and it's going back either to the assumption sheet or the staging area. And I will actually create a template very soon, which will clarify a lot of these points. Okay. uh, Same thing with the cost of goods sold. So like say cost of goods, this is coming from the staging area. If I go to the staging area, you see that my revenue, this is the number, it's there in a revenue. So my sales one, sales two are coming from here, and that number itself is coming from these assumptions, like product, the units sold, right? And units sold times something in assumptions, that is the cost per product, right? Price per unit, right? So these are the ways in which you generate the revenue. Okay, so everything is calculation backed, right? So if I want to drill down, I can say, so tomorrow I want to change my cost per unit. I may just make the 200 300, and see that automatically these numbers I think will change. So I think it was C8. I think these numbers have changed. C9. So is it C8? Sorry, this one is the cost per unit. So if I make this 200 into 300, then you see that this 20,000 became 30,000, and automatically it reflects the cash flow as well. Okay. So this is the way. So if I had hard coded here, then I would have changed here everywhere. It would have been very difficult. So it is a very elegant way of creating your cash flow model. Okay. And so things like also the expenses. So what is the cost of goods sold? So cost of goods sold, as you see, is dependent on the units. So it is linked to it, right? So if I change this number, let's say from 100 to 200, so you see all the numbers change, the revenue numbers change, the cogs changes automatically, right? And here also it automatically changes, right? So that's how you have to design your sheet, so that it is all linked as per the formula. There might be some idiosyncratic things which are not based on no assumption, like consulting revenue. Maybe this company is also consulting with government or some NGO or whatever. Then you can see that it is just coming abruptly. There's no pattern to it. But again, these are all real examples, right? You do have businesses which have idiosyncratic revenues, so you should be having that flexibility to add it, but then still add it in a methodical way, so that tomorrow you know exactly you are adding this, and you can just add a comment also here saying, this is from um, Karnataka government, for example. They are giving me some consulting revenue, so you know that why have you added this, and you can come back and change this tomorrow, right? So things like this. So I wanted to show you an existing one just to give an example. If you put your assumptions and staging right, you can generate the cash flow. It's automatically done. You start with the cash assumption, and you can see how the cash flow is changing. And you can see that this is actually a loss making company, because at any even in the last month, after 2 years of running into the business, it's making 7 lakh revenue, and it is incurring 8.5 9 lakhs of negative. So it is not a sustainable company. Maybe it is going towards the path of sustainability in 3 years, 4 years, but at least from a 2 year point of view, you can conclude that this company is not making any money, right? And this becomes a summary view. So it automatically gets generated. So it's all formula linked. So it sums up all the kind of monthly cash flows for the 2 years, and generates the year one, year two cash flow, right? So this is what an investor would be very interested to see. Okay, what is your year one receipts? What is the year one expenses? Now this is pretty much the amount that the investor might have to fund you for that year, because if you are not getting this 54 lakhs, then maybe you will run out of business, right? Because it is negative cash, right? So this is your free cash flow. But you can see that if you extrapolate the growth to a large extent, you can see year 2 they are making negative, but then they start making a positive net cash flow. So this is a good indication that the business is sustainable, to answer somebody else's question. But this is also based on some assumptions you have made. Now, anyone can challenge these assumptions. The investor might ask you, hey, why have you assumed 70% growth? Then you can say, hey, see, I have made 100% growth in the last year, so I'm assuming it's gradually tapering, which is a very reasonable explanation. But you need to kind of, have those, responses very, very handy, kind of a thing. Okay. And then the same numbers are quarterly also represented from the same sheet. Okay. So it's all formula linked. We'll actually generate this and you'll appreciate it. And this is where these expenses that we just spoke. So employee costs you see is coming down. You can see COGS is increasing. This again, I said every number that is increasing from a ratio point of view, you should question. So for me, it is counterintuitive, but anyone wants to respond, why do you think COGS might increase? Which is cost of goods sold, which is if I'm selling something worth 10 rupees or 100 rupees, my COGS is worth 10.24, which is still very small percentage though, but it is increasing from 7.55 rupees. Okay, very good, Anish. So that was one of the expected answers, inflation. But then you would have also argued, hey, maybe the cost also, the revenue also should have increased, right? So, but again, you might be in a very competitive market. So as you see, in a very competitive market, the margins actually come down over a period of time. The first entrant will obviously skim the market and get a lot of revenue, a lot of margin, but eventually the margin will come down, right? If the industry itself is shifting itself to a low margin industry, then obviously the kind of, the revenue will come down, right? So the ratios will change as well, right? And the second explanation is inflation. So you are taking the hit of inflation on the cost side, but you're not passing it on into the revenue side, which is to your customer, again because of competitive thing. Agreed. So these are all again, so if you have made a capex related thing, that will not come under COGS anyways. But yes, maybe you're not when you're opened a new industry, new factory with expanded capacity, as you ramp up the production, the COGS might be higher to begin with. So that's a very good explanation from Anish. Great. So this was just to walk you through how the things work. Okay. But now I actually wanted to spend time in creating something very briefly, and we can do something very simple, which you all can take away from this session. Okay. Is there another comment? Yes, it's a COGS is a variable cost. That's the most natural form of variable cost. In fact, sales minus COGS is what is called as a it's a gross margin, it's a gross profit, basically, and gross margin. Okay. Variable cost actually is slightly more like you can have other like commissions or something else, like any fulfillment cost for that revenue can also be a variable cost. Like I said, the definition of variable cost is every incremental cost, the cost that you incur for every incremental revenue, right? So COGS definitely is a variable cost, but it can also be some other things like commissions or delivery cost, or various other unit linked costs. And revenue minus COGS is gross margin, revenue minus variable cost is contribution margin. So just have that difference, and revenue minus all other operating costs is the operating margin, right? So that's basically the ratios, and revenue minus everything else, like is in the P&L world, will become like the net profit in some sense. Okay. Again, we are confusing slightly. All these are terms in the P&L, by the way, but assuming no accruals and all of that, you can apply it here as well. I just wanted to caveat that. Where would the cost of goods sold sold be shown in the cash flow? In the expenses, right? Again, like I said, in this cash flow, you are the boss. You can define anywhere. You can call it as COGS, or I can just say, I can sum all of this both and just say it's a variable cost, right? I can just say variable cost, and I will, in the assumptions, I will put COGS and other variable costs separately. All those things you can basically do. So let me stop sharing this and actually share an empty sheet now, because that's where we need to start. Are you seeing a file called a simple GTM sheet? Right? Yeah. So So now in this, again, there are some instructions, and also, like I said, this is not just about financial modeling, but start from your vision, strategy, execution to the cash flow. It just helps put all of this in a nice way. And that's why I thought just doing a modeling is of no use if you don't get the picture before that, right? So start with the vision. What's your vision? How do you describe your 5-year goals? This actually sets your North Star milestone, right? Where, okay, I'm the reason why I'm setting up the company. Maybe I want to make money. Maybe I want to solve, create impact. Maybe I want to do, but where do I want to reach 5 years from now? What is it? Is it, can you define it in terms of customers? Can you define it in terms of your revenue projections, right? It's very important, to have some sense of that, and you can always change it, but it's always good to have that in, right? Just like your vision, right? So have some metrics to define where do you want to reach after 5 years. With this, internalizing this in your team, and this exercise needs to happen in a co-creative way. I generally facilitate some of these discussions with founders, but you generally should get all your co-founders, get, let's say if you're investor, you already have an investor, you should get your investor, your board members and all, then we generally co-create this session so that multiple perspectives come in the thing. Then the typical business model canvas. I hope that this is not the first time you're seeing this. This is a very well-known model by Strategizer. It's a very nice template to summarize what you're up to doing. Like, what is your value proposition? What are the customer segments and all of that. So a business model canvas is a very, like I said, this part of the business model canvas is all about taking your value to the market, to the customer, right? So it's all about selling your value proposition. This part of the business model canvas is all about creating your value proposition, right? So through your activities, through the resources, through your partners, you are creating the value proposition. This is the selling the value proposition. This goes back to what I just said, what Steve Jobs said, right? So it's all about the two critical people in your business are the people who sell your value proposition and the people who create your value proposition. Everyone else is like incidental or supporting the whole thing. That is the reason for your existence. And this is how you'll capture your value proposition, capture your value through monetization. Because if you don't capture value, then what's the point of running your business, right? You're not a philanthropy or not a charity, right? So what is your revenue stream that helps you capture based on the cost structure? Obviously the revenue should exceed your cost. That is the ultimate kind of goal. Okay, so this is your business model kind of. I just did a 1 minute refresher on this. Then to go to your something called OKRs. I'll not spend time on this again. There are many resources available and I can share it with you guys if you want. But things like, what are the key objectives and key results? What are your goalposts? So given that this is your vision for 5 years, this is your strategy for the next 2 to 5 years. What is the literally the next 2 year different goalposts to reach your vision, right? So if you want to hit 100 crore revenue in your 5 years, as per this, maybe you need to get to at least uh, let's say 20 crore revenue in next 2 years, for example, right? I'm just taking. So for getting 20 crore, maybe you in the next 6 months you need to start at least making 50 lakhs, right? So things like that, right? How do you ramping up your scale up, right? You should be able to visualize it in a nice way, and OKRs give you a good way of setting your goal, defining your goal posts, that is objective. For example, improving customer retention is an objective. The key result is maybe reducing churn rate from 30% to 15% is a very objective, measurable key result, right? So objective should be something ambitious, key result should be something measurable, and it should be aligned to your business plan. So hence you always track it over a period of time, every quarter, so that you know whether you are going in the right direction or not, right? And this doing a good exercise of this will help you visualize the trajectory your startup will take. And all of this is needed to create your execution plan from 6 months point of view. Like I said, 6 months is a period, decent enough period where things can be predictable for you, right? Beyond that, you also don't know what will happen, and performance in this 6 months will actually pave the way for the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and so on. So a lot of things are on the assumptions, but maybe 6 months you can keep it at a certain element of certainty that have your so here you describe your action items. Do you want to hire people? How are you adopting partners in your sales channels? What is the capacity ramp up that you need to do to achieve the revenue targets that you are meeting? if you're a product, what is your product roadmap? And there are templates for that. I will not go into it, but you can create a product roadmap based on how you want to take your product to the market. You can have a sales pipeline to, prioritize your customer segments, prioritize your channels, because at the end of the day, you need to, there's a method to this madness, right? You can't just go that every day I'll just randomly do things. So you need to put everything in a perspective and nice way so that things are predictable and going as per your plan, right? And once you have done all of these things is when you're ready to do your cash flow. So all of this was kind of leading up to the cash flow, right from your vision, your strategy, your objectives or your goalposts, the game plan to achieve those goalposts, and the tools like product roadmap, sales pipeline to monitor your game plan every week, every day, and every month, kind of a thing. And if you do these exercises right, then you can get your cash flows done well. Okay, so with that, we have about 10-12 minutes. So let's take a quick example to do a very quick cash flow. Okay, so anyone wants to give a business idea very quickly? What is the business that we want to run? You can use your chat. Should it be what, like a software business or EdTech? Okay, good. Sahil said EdTech. So let's do an EdTech. So what are the different components of EdTech, Sahil, or anyone else, right? What are you selling? Are you selling content? Are you selling products? Are you selling tutor? Like, are you a marketplace? Okay, you're selling product. Okay, we are. Let's combine all of this. So we are selling videos, content, and products. And maybe a product will be an overarching layer about the content, and maybe test prep is an ancillary service. So you're selling content and also you're giving test prep. So let's try to make satisfy everyone here. Okay. Yeah, so if you are selling content and also doing assessment, which is the test prep, um, what are the revenue line items? Like, what are the revenue? How are you making money as a business? Very quickly. Subscription, very good. So subscription to the content, I'm assuming. Fee, okay, like it could be like you're also bringing a tuition angle here on top of the content, maybe that's why you're saying fee. Okay, so let's and yeah, let's say we are like a Baiju, right? Baiju is doing everything, they're acquiring all kinds of companies too. So let's say let's actually define it. So let's say sale of so subscription fee, okay, and let's say assessment fee, or test, kind of a thing. We can also say yeah, I think let's keep it to these two for now. Okay, what are the kind of cost line items? Anything? Teachers, okay, I'm paying so for subscription fee I'm paying teachers. So software, salary, marketing, tech, okay. So let's say product development, okay, salaries. So that this is all your engineering, or let's say engineering better, because product development also means product management. So engineering salaries, content salaries. So one is I can do this, okay, or I can put all the salaries together as well, right? So let me do that actually. Let me say salaries, okay. Then somebody said marketing costs. Let's assume that somebody said infrastructure costs. So infrastructure costs like cloud, etc. Okay. Somebody said teachers. So let's assume we have teachers on contract. So contract teachers, for example, I'm just making it up. Okay. Admin, other admin. So let me just say SG&A cost. Okay. All admins go here. Okay, good. Let's not make it too complicated that we might have to do it. Now, let's say salaries. Now, we also double clicked on salaries. So now I can go to staging area to actually say, hey, I need to make up salaries, but let's first define the revenue. So let's say subscription fee, assessment fee. So both of these are basically coming from your user base, right? And let's assume that a subset of users are taking the assessment. So let's say if 100 people take subscriptions, a subset of them will take the assessment. Okay. So how will you define your projections of your subscription fee? Do you have a standard subscription cost? Is it correct? Okay, so and there you can add any kind of complexity. Okay, for example, I have to clean this up. Let me clean this up. So let's say first is let's say subscription model A, okay? Then the subscription model B, because there's always I'm giving you X plus, I'm giving X plus Y and all of that. And here you can basically create a trajectory, and then so here subscribers, let me just call it subscribers. Okay, so maybe I'm just to make an assumption, right? So let's say I start with 10 users in, and this is August 2021. Okay, August 2021. Sorry. Okay, so 10 users. How do you think we should grow? Should we grow organically month on month, or is there a rationale with which we are growing, right? Um, Maybe your subscribers can grow. Okay, good. Maybe your subscribers can grow based on the teachers also. Maybe a teacher might refer people to your company, right? So it can be something like subscription. Yeah, I mean, of course we should all aim for exponential growth itself. So subscription model C, where teacher referral, right? um, so here let's say 10. So let's first assume it's a typical month on month growth. So I'll go to the assumption sheet and I'll say subscription A growth rate percentage is fixed. Let's say 5% month on month. Let's do one thing. Let's say 5% month on month in year one, and as you grow, or let's say actually 10% month on month. Actually, it can be very much higher. Let's say 30% month on month year one, and then it goes down 10% year two, and things like that, right? Yes, very good point. Churn. So churn is a very good point. So thanks for bringing it up. So let's say 10% here, and then let's say 5%, and that's the business as usual from there. Okay. Um, let's also say what's the subscription fee for product one. What do you think is typically the fee of edtech? Let's say it's giving like 6 subjects, all classes, kind of a thing. How much per month? Wow, 30,000. Maybe per year you mean. So let's say it's 4,000 or 5,000 a month. Okay, 5,000. Very good. So let's say it's a fixed value for now, or we can further have inflation there also. But just to keep things simple, let me just say it is 5,000. Okay, as fixed value. Now let's say churn. We can also add some churn every month, where let's say it's a, just for simplicity, let's say it's a 2% churn, or let me make it fixed here, 2% churn. Or basically it's from the paid customers, or let's make it 5% churn, for example, right? So this is my subscription A assumptions. Okay, I can actually make a summary like this: subscription A assumptions. Okay, and get all of these details. Now let's try to stage all of this information. So the growth rate is coming from this number. So it is times 1 plus the growth rate. Growth rate is coming from assumptions. So the growth rate for year one is 30%. So I anchor it so that it doesn't move. And this becomes my growth projections for 1 year. Okay. Now I will see the growth you're seeing, but this is true of any exponential startup, right? Somebody wanted exponential, so here it is. So again, this is 1 plus the second year growth. So I can't just drag it this side. So this becomes 10%. So the way you are growing is getting slower. Okay. So this is the thing. So year two is done. So I'm getting the number of users. With this, I will multiply with the subscription fee to get the, is this correct? It is actually not correct. Okay, because I have not factored in the churn. Okay, so oh wonderful, Varun actually mentioned that. So so we need to also factor in the churn. So let me actually multiply here 1 minus, because it's anchoring from the same rate here, 1 minus the churn rate. So you see 13 became 12, right? So you're also factoring the churn every year. Okay, so see it was what, 170. See the power of compounding and churn, right? 170 is become 102. So that's how way it works. So let me just add this in the next one as well. Okay, right. So there you go. So now I'm getting the fee here. So this is the fee. So as I multiply this, sorry, this is this times 5,000, right? So 50,000. So this is actually the subscription model A revenue. Okay. So I just I anchor this and then I drag it. Again, there are two prices, I guess. There's inflation as well. No, I think I've used 5,000 only. So let me just keep it simple. So you see, I start making 50,000 revenue in month one, and then I eventually go to start making about 8.5, right? Yeah, I will share the sheet, don't worry. Okay, so this is your revenue. Now this becomes my revenue in the main sheet. This is the way I calculated it. But here, hey, see, this is the total sheet. So here now I have to do subscription model B. But let me do the teacher referral. Okay. So here you assume that instead of doing subscription like a normal growth, I'm assuming some, my teachers empaneled on my platform. Okay. Now let's say I have 10 teachers, and then even that is also growing with the same growth rate. Let's say I'll use 5 for now, right? And let me anchor that as well. Yeah. So again, I will use some kind of a growth rate to grow the teachers. Okay. Now these teachers are basically referring subscriptions. Okay. So let's assume that teachers are referring, teacher referrals are, let's say, in year one, it's 5 students per month. And then maybe the product really becomes bad. So it becomes 10 referrals per month, right? So you can basically change it here, saying subscription from teacher referral is times this assumption of 5, which is fixed, right? Which is 50, which again goes to first year, and then again it will change. So I'll change it and make it 10. Okay. So you can see the multiplier effect that it creates. And now this subscription is basically resulting subscription B revenue. Okay, which can be I can assume a different subscription fee, which is subscription B fee is, let's say, with teacher maybe it's slightly higher, so 7,500. Maybe we are definitely not creating a product for the underserved. Subscription B revenue, which is 7,500, right? Okay, so you can see already, I mean, this is really becoming a Baidu model, looks like. So yeah, so you see the revenue I'm making. So this, I'm just giving example. So you created subscription A and B. With this, we aggregate it at the cash flow level. So I will add this 50,000 plus this. This becomes my aggregated revenue, and I extrapolate it for 2 years. So you see, my revenue is built. Your assessment can be a subset of it, let's say, or it can be a subset of your, you can do bunch of things, right? You can actually make it a subset of your subscriber from this plus this times, let's say only 50% will take that. By the way, I should not have hard coded this 50% also, but let me take the shortcut in the interest of time. Okay. Sorry. So it's basically is equal to the units. I had not taken care of the brackets then, times 10%. So many people times, let's say we'll still use the same, we just reuse the assumption, saying another 5,000 rupees for assessment. So this becomes your assessment revenue. And let's say make it 50%, right? So this becomes your assessment revenue. So I'm just making it up. Of course, what I'm, of course, I had not anchored things. So this should be anchored. So So I just created I quickly created two revenue lines in front of you, right? So this is the way you will generate your thing. Similarly, you can just create cash flows. So maybe, let's say year one, I'm just taking shortcuts now, but let's say year one engineering salary is, let's say, 10 lakhs per month. Okay. And then it goes to 20 lakhs per month kind of a thing. So things like that. So just to give you the idea, so I'll just then mark it to that. So yeah, so 10 lakhs per month. So things like that. So it becomes 10 lakhs here, and then it goes to 20 lakhs. So I'll just wrap up. Give me like 2 more minutes. I wanted to show you the overall view as well. So that makes sense and that kind of completes the logic. So let's just say it is just this, and there's obviously content creation cost, let's say. And let me just take a shortcut here. I'm conflicting my own statement, but let me just say every year you're putting some 5 lakh worth costs, right? And yeah, let me just do that. So yeah, so you start realizing these, and then let's say there is senior management costs. Obviously, CEO need to take salaries and all, and management costs is another 10 lakhs, for example. I'm just hard coding it with the purpose, but you should never do it. Okay, so now I just created a very simple cash flow. Okay, I just told you of how to use assumption staging. I've obviously not followed my own rule, but you can get a sense. So with this, you can now get a sense that, hey, I start making revenues 5 lakhs, 6 lakhs, 6 lakhs, and then keep increasing to 43 lakhs per month. But hey, I'm also incurring 25 lakhs, that kind of a cost every month, then becoming 35 lakhs and all of that. So does this company need money? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Why? Because obviously the outflow is higher than the inflow, negative cash flows. Okay, so what's the ask? Although I have the answer there, this template gives you that. But what's the ask? How do you determine the ask? So basically you have to go for the most negative cash flow. Okay, so you see at December 22 onwards, suddenly this 36 lakhs and I'm making 35 lakhs, and then the cost is kind of coming down. Basically the revenue is exceeding the cost. So that point is the point. So if you have to run this business, if you don't have 2 crore 18 lakhs or 2.2 crores, then your business will be negative. So if let's say you raise 2.2 crores of money, right? Then the investment has to become zero. Okay. That's because you will never hit negative cash flow. Okay. So that is the whole, beauty of running this in this way. So you actually know as a business model, how much money you have to raise. And again, this money can be raised by increasing revenues. It can be raised by debt. It can be raised by grant and also by equity. So this is the way you know your ask. And you also have something like a burn and runway, right? So let's say if I have, like, let's say 50 lakhs in the account, then it will also tell, and let's say I'm starting from June. Okay, yeah, June. So somewhere I think there is negative cash flows in the year one itself. But let's say you have 1 crore in your account. So yeah, so basically it also tells how much runway you have from a particular month. So end of June, you have looks like, okay, there's some negative. Yeah, I think end of October you are becoming negative. For end of June, you have 3 months of runway basically, and October you will need the cash. So it will also give you a sense of the runway based on your burn rate, right? So these are again coded into the system. So I will share the template with you, but this is the way you will make the cash flow. Now the next picture that I wanted to show you was a summary. So the summary gets auto-generated for 2 years. So you can see all the revenues are filled, all these things are filled. And if you have growth assumptions from here, like 70% and things like that, you can extrapolate it basically, right? So yeah, so that's the gist of it. So you can extrapolate it, and you can further if you want to. So you can do a bunch of these things. This will basically give you the free cash flow. So you can see the free cash flow as period changes. It will your salaries, these things will taper off. Your revenue will grow exponentially. Your costs will grow linearly, and hence you make the money basically. So that is the way you have to make sense of this overall sheet, right? So yeah, this sheet gives you a bunch of things. It helps you calculate the runway, the cost, the investment ask, the burn rate, and also eventually once you have the free cash flows, you can also use it to calculate the valuation of the company. And you can also see the various ratios. You can see in the 2 years, the salaries are coming down, the content creation costs are coming down, management costs again also are also coming down. So these are all good ratios to assess a healthy cash flow, right? Is this clear? Like I tried to do a very quick job of this, but I just wanted to, I was very particular that I also show you how you can do this kind of a thing. And then this also becomes your summary, right? So tomorrow you can just copy paste. You want to show, you want to, so let me actually do this for the others as well. So yeah. And then let's say your salary costs are increasing with a constant uh, like 20% kind of a thing. Okay, I'm just making it up. So all these costs will also increase like that. Okay, so yeah, so now you see my free cash flows is increasing. So over a period of time, and my all the ratios you see are doing beautifully kind of a thing, right? um, and so now tomorrow you want to give an investor, your investor asks you, hey, give me your projections. You just copy paste this and just put it in your deck and beautify the tables. Your cash flow is ready, right? So yeah, these are all the things you can do, right? uh, and yeah, I hope this is useful, and I will share the template with you so that and yeah, if Vania allows me, then we can answer any more questions that you have.
Yeah, yeah, Shrikant, as long as you're ready to do that, I have no issues.
Sure. So Varun has asked some really high level questions beyond my pay grade, I guess. But so yeah, one is positive free cash flows. Unlike, because some of the, see again, so this is a chicken and egg, right? So for example, yeah, I'm sure Flipkart's business plan in 2007 wouldn't have shown that until 2020 they would be running negative cash flows. But see, that's where everyone is seeing that opportunity, right? People are putting in money more and more and more. So the way you look at it, the way you look at it, Varun and everyone else, is treat it as a stint, right? So of course you don't even know you'll survive for 20 years. So what's the point of putting that big picture? So you treat it as stint. So I generally see that bring some logical conclusion to your, convey some logical conclusion to your investor as to what you want to achieve in the next 2 years, right? The investor is not able to see a sense of coming towards unit economics profitability, or a sense of acquiring a larger, okay, I'll also quickly touch upon sensitivity analysis, a sense of a larger let's say market capture, right? Then they will not be convinced to invest, right? So so it's very important for you to convey that logical conclusions for every 24 months, 36 months, 5 years, 24 months, 5 years kind of thing, right? So I would say, do indicate, that's why I put a 5-year horizon also, do indicate some sense of rationality in the 5 years, right? You just can't say that you are the next Flipkart in your pitch deck for example, right? So I would say, bring some bring to a conclusion that you want to achieve something with the capital that they are giving you, the valuable capital. They have an opportunity cost of putting in a stock market. Why are they putting in a startup, right? So logical capital of giving them a non-linearity of the growth, but also giving a sense of coming together of good economics, and not just burn. Of course, then it goes snowballs into something massive. Then of course you will have infinite gunpowder, so to say, in that VC parlance, to take it to the next level, right? um, for exit, because a large company would buy them out. Yes. Yes, because everyone is hinging on the positive cash flows that Flipkart will eventually make. right? In this case. So everyone is investing with the hope. So it is unfair to say that, hey, it's all negative cash flows, why are you attributing value? Because everyone is attributing value to the future scenario, and maybe at the end, everyone makes money. Like Flipkart has generated so much millionaires in the country through their ESOP buybacks and the exits that the early investors have got. So that is the whole game of venture investing, right? It sometimes it might be a little counterintuitive starting as a bootstrapped company, but that's the way it all stacks up. I will quickly show you sensitivity. It's nothing. Sensitivity is very simple, saying actually it should not be done this way, by the way. But so sensitivity should go back to the actual assumptions. So what is sensitivity? Because your business is unpredictable at the end of the day, right? Things can change, things can go wrong. I mean, January 2020 or February 2020, no one could have predicted what the next 6 months would be like, right? So what would happen? So some business, the sensitivity would have been something like this. Something like this. The sensitivity would have been something like this, saying next, year zero revenue, right? But let's say in a COVID time, right? The sensitivity, like it became, let's say 30% reduction. So you can do a bunch of assumptions. So this was a default assumption, right? That you're making 84 lakhs and 3 crores and this, but then you can stress the assumptions. You can say, irrespective of what the model is throwing out, I will put a stress of another 40% reduction. Okay. So then you see the 80 lakhs became 50 lakhs, the 2.9 crores became 1.78 crores. So all the models have gone haywire, right? And maybe your COGS hasn't really come down. So in this case, you were supposed to start making money in the third year. Now you're delayed it, and your valuation will also automatically get impacted, right? So that is the whole role, and same thing you can assume for this also, assessments also, right? So you can see further it impacts the cash flows. Similarly, you can increase that. Just now, say for example, hiring engineering talent is so tough. There's a lot of Twitter noise on this, that people are getting tens of lakhs increment for every year they serve as a good quality engineer, right? So obviously you assume the salary is wrong. So let's say you have to inflate the salaries by 20%. Then you do that. Then automatically it will result in further things, right? So basically sensitivity analysis is just to stress your own assumptions in some boundary cases to say, okay, I'm giving the investor this picture, the 0, 1, but internally I know that things can go this bad. And if things can just go bad, then in this case, you needed just 2 crores of investment that Varun just mentioned, right? But now you need 6 crores investment if you had stressed to this level. So in a COVID scenario, maybe you needed 6 crore investment to even survive. Then you can do many other things. Then you can say, oh, okay, let me actually fire people, let me give them furloughs and all that, and then you manage your expenses accordingly, right? Again, entrepreneur's job is to live in constraints, right? So you'll have to optimize for what the realities are, but this model gives you, it's a dashboard at the end of the day, right? I want to change the assumption, I can go here and make this 5,000 20,000. Okay, then automatically everything changes, right? So it's like a dashboard. So things change drastically. Again, it starts profitable right from year one. So you can basically play around, and it's like a dashboard. It's basically, it's gold in, gold out, garbage in, garbage out. If you're putting wrong information, you'll get wrong data out. If you put in the right rational information, you'll get the right rational out, right? So let me switch back to the 0% case. So this is a very, very attractive business. First year just requires some 60 lakhs of money, and then it's minting money like anything. But this all can be done in a hypothetical session like this. Real business is hard, and I'm sure you all will go back to doing your real business after this session. So yeah. Next question. So I hope Sahil gives you a sense, so you can just play around on this model and do a bunch of things. At a pre-revenue, what is the best way to arrive at a valuation? See, one way, something like this, right? Even if at a pre-revenue, if you can get a trajectory that year 2, year 3, you're starting revenue, year 5, then you have a fair value free cash flow like this. With this, what you can do is you can create a valuation. See, valuation at the end of the day is a simple formula. It's like NPV with the free cash flows. Of course, you don't have to end here. You have to put something called a terminal value, right? But just to give an example, let's say if this business were to exist only for 5 years, then there is a discount rate which typically is the risk premium. So it typically, let's say, it's 25% in case of startups. And then I can just create, drag all the free cash flows. And now this becomes the valuation. So this company, as per this cash flow and a 25% discount rate, is valued at 32 crores. So this is the way you can arrive at valuation. Obviously, investors don't go by this. They typically go by a minimum stake kind of an approach, saying, hey, I'm giving you 2 years of runway, and this is a big enough market you're going. I need 15% stake, or I need 20% stake. That also, investors typically go after. Or it can be a multiple. So for example, if on year 5 multiple basis, this company, on year 1 multiple basis, this is a very rich valuation. This valuation would have been like multiple of 100, 11. So the multiple is 11. So there can be a multiple approach. There can be a discount. What I just did is a discounted cash flow approach. Basically, I put all the cash flows, I got the free cash flows, and I created the valuation. I'm not assuming terminal value. That's a caveat I'm adding to all of you. But this is also a hypothetical thing. The cost base should have been much higher upfront. We are making a lot of money in this company. It's a very unrealistic cash flow in that sense. And the multiple would have been 11.34. So you can use any methodologies to kind of get it. But like I said, early days, it doesn't matter, to be frank, Santosh. An investor will typically look, okay, is your company going to go after a $1 billion market? And if yes, then let me give you a runway to hit a particular milestone. And for that, let me reasonably take 15, 20, 25% stake. They don't want to take more of. See, if they are putting in 1 crore and your model says your valuation is 2 crores, doesn't mean investor will take 50% of your company, because they also know that if they take 50% in the first round itself, then you are basically becoming unattractive to future investments, because as a promoter, you have very less skin in the game. So these are all ways in which investors typically go about valuing. Typically, every venture capital fund will try to take between 15 and 25% for a runway of 24 months in an aggressive business plan case, kind of a thing. That's the ballpark, I would say. Best case, worst case, doing sensitivity. So yeah, exactly. So this is all up to. So see, the best case is when assumptions are much better than what you assumed. So for example, so this is the default case. Let's say the best case is you are getting 30% more revenue, and maybe you're optimizing on your cost as well. Now this can be your best case, where the receipts are higher and expenses are lower, right? So you see, automatically this company is already doing, it doesn't even need money now, for example. The worst case is when like a COVID like example, right? You do a negative on your receipts, and then you further inflate your costs, kind of a thing, right? And like I said, these are meaningless. Actually, you need to actually go to the assumptions. You need to go saying, okay, the subscription fee is going from here on here, or I'm hiring more people. Those are the basis in which you actually do this sensitivity. But doing it at this level just gives a shortcut. So if you just want to do a quick 30% increase, 20% increase, that is what you can get from this scenario. So here you see you are doing worse off in this case slightly. So see, again, Sahil, like these are all, like I said, this is a dashboard for you. I can see your business. I can spend time with your business model and give you a better advised input. But at the end of the day, I can play around with numbers to any range to that extent, right? So that hopefully that answers. So Varun is asking, because Varun knows me well, he's been like asking very long answers. I will. I'll take it offline, maybe, Varun. That also is a good placeholder for us to catch up. Yeah, all cash flows you have done. Next one. Yes, actually it is. See, it is acceptable, Varun, right? I know that, very risk averse investors will force you to show profitability in 2 years, but everyone knows that their exit will not come because of profitability. That's the tragedy, right? Investors exit will not come because of profitability. Investors exit will come because of acquisition, or exit from the next round investor, right? So and you are getting exit from the next round investor only because there's negative cash flows, and that needs to be financed by the next round investor. So it's a little counterintuitive, Varun, but that's the way it works. So maybe an investor pushes you saying, no, show me profitability, then you might have to be forced to design a model for them. But I think it is acceptable, especially in a typical growth stage industry, that you are expected to keep expanding your market rapidly. The reason why you're being given venture capital is because you have to blitz scale, and that means that you will be needing more and more capital as you go along. I think what some very professional investors in the VC world look for is what are the key milestones you will hit in the next 18-24 months, and basis that they will fund you. Because if you're able to acquire 1 million customers, doesn't matter you're losing money today, you are having 1 million customers, you can do many things with them. That's the way I'll put it. Okay, I think we'll open it out. I'm there for next 10 minutes. So anyone, like, let's bring the session to a close. But I'm there if, any other questions. But I hope you found this session useful. I try to keep it practical towards the end of it. So happy to share these templates. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I like doing more of these hands-on sessions. So happy to engage with you. I will just share my coordinates so you can connect with me post the session. So there were some questions. You can look at the slides. Some questions. I also have some slides on valuation, which we can cover later if needed.
Yeah, Shrikant, I think we must have a workshop or webinar on valuation itself, because I do feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, struggle with that, and that'll be again very, very useful, just like this session.
Yeah, sure. Great. So yeah, happy to engage with entrepreneurs. You want me to have a quick glance at your model? Maybe I'll not be able to spend half a day workshops with each of you, but definitely 15-20 minutes glance and give a quick feedback. I'm always happy to do it.
So thank you so much, Shrikant, for this entire 2-hour workshop and so patiently, answering all the questions that we had. And I think I myself really enjoyed it. I loved how you were, asking questions in between and kept it very interactive. So thank you so much. It was lovely having you here.
Sure, my pleasure as well. And yeah, we are also partnering with Head Start, what I do at Capita. So if anyone wants to explore our product, we have some benefits that we give for early stage startups. Basically, we are giving free product of our Capita to startups. So you can reach out to me as well for that. And I'll share the details. Basically, it helps you manage your cap tables and ESOPs. And maybe one year we should do a session on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what I'll also do is I'll send across a mail to everybody present in the session with a little brief about Capita and how we're partnering. So,
Sure.
anybody who wants to explore, more than happy to make that connect and, get you on board on Capita as well.
Perfect. Great. Thank you all. It was a good experience for me, and I hope to engage with you guys in the future as well. You have my coordinates, so please feel free to reach out to me. I am also on LinkedIn and Twitter. Yeah.
Thanks, Shrikant.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.